Hi, Georgiana.
Hi, Ellie.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome, awesome. Hi, everyone. This is Ellie and Georgiana. Welcome to Better Now, Living Mindfully. This is a conversation between two friends that explores a mindful approach to life. And last time we talked, Georgiana, you mentioned the idea of exploring self-criticism and judgment as our topic for today.
Yes, we talked quite a bit about many things last podcast, and self-criticism came up as something that we could explore a little bit. So it's one that I know I've been doing to myself for a long time until I learned consciously how to become a better friend to me. And part of
Mm,
that for me involves meditation, taking that pause, because let's let's face it, if we are treating ourselves worse than we'd treat anybody we know,
mm,
then that's not being kind and gentle with ourselves. So
mm-hmm.
the first step is really looking at where is our habit energy going that gets critical on ourselves. And one area for a lot of people is around self image, body image.
Mm-hmm.
This was one that I dealt with for many years until I learned that I want to befriend myself and not criticize myself. Looking in
Mm-hmm.
the mirror, look in the
Right.
mirror. Instead of seeing the gorgeous dress I had on or how beautiful my hair looked, um,
Mm-hmm.
or my makeup looked good, or I would
Mm-hmm.
see my stomach.
Right. Or you just get up, you look at a pimple on your face and you're like,
All
oh
right,
my God, that looks terrible. And
right.
honestly, the self-criticism is something that sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it. Like, because the self-talk is so like under the radar, right? Like,
Right.
I don't, like, I would say, oh my gosh, that pimple looks awful or whatever it was. And not really think of being down on myself because of it. Because then I get rushed into my routine and I keep moving towards life. But it's that constant little moments of self-criticism that really just bring us down.
Oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Because if we can't be kind to ourselves, who is going to be kind? We can't like ourselves. Who's going to like us?
Right,
I
right.
mean,
Hey,
plus it takes away from the joy of the present moment. But if we go into the pause rather than the clatter of our minds and
mm-hmm,
this habit energy, I call it habit energy,
mm-hmm.
that
Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I
habit
haven't heard that
energy,
term.
usually habit energy is where your default is in your mind when you're thinking.
Mm,
Do you know, some people go into their past and start thinking about what they said at the meeting that they were just in.
mm,
That I shouldn't have said that. It wasn't taken well. Nobody was even listening to me. And then that self-talk starts happening because that's
mm,
the criticism. That's
mm-hmm.
the saying, I wasn't good enough. That meeting,
Oh,
I shouldn't have said that. Why
mm-hmm.
didn't I say something different? A lot of
Right.
people will do that in the past.
Mm,
It's interesting because research shows that some of that is to try to change it, even though we know we can't. It's already
mm,
done. The meeting happened, your
mm,
statement came out, it's done. But we review it over and over again. And then we start looking at how it was accepted or not accepted at the table and
mm.
start thinking and start criticizing ourselves even more. I mean,
Is there a
personalizing every person's the way they looked or the way they moved their pencil. That was
mm-hmm.
about me, you know.
Right. And that personalization, I think that
Mm-hmm.
personalizing is what destroys us because oftentimes, like, it's not personal, but we just create the story in our mind and we put it back on ourselves, right? It's like that
Mm-hmm.
U2 song, about being three and the world is all about me.
Right. Uh-huh.
So I
Yeah.
have a question.
The,
Can you have habit energy for the future as well? Or is this
oh,
just something
God.
that happens for the
Yeah.
past?
No, it is.
Mm,
I'm one of those habit energy for the future because I want to have everything go as I plan. So I
Mm.
do a lot of planning. My habit
Mm-hmm.
energy is around lists of things.
Mm.
Or that can be a kind of a positive thing because we need to do some planning, but it can get to be negative when we are getting afraid of what the future is going to bring. We're in the middle of a pandemic right now. We don't know what the future is going to bring. If we
Mm-hmm.
start thinking about how it's going to be, even in 2 weeks from now, we can get very anxious,
Right.
worried.
Yeah, that's why it's so important just to go back to the present, just going
Yes.
back to this place right now, because we're feeling it too in terms like going back to school, the ramifications of that. And yeah, so, okay, just to summarize really quick, you said that habit energy is something, it's our default mode in a way of being in our head, going back into the past, kind of like rehearsing what just happened and creating some sort of judgment around it and doing some thinking about it, but it's personal.
Mm-hmm.
So, whatever it is, it's like a personal critique of ourselves or a personal thought of ourselves at that moment that maybe isn't like, I'm so awesome, but it's more like, I'm not that good enough, or, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
narrative. So, go
So the
ahead.
first step really is to pause. I mean, that's what we're talking about. The first step is to pause and recognize that you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
To just take that moment, we can take a moment right now just to be in the breath and be in the body and to just see and feel that sensation of breathing and the body and see if thoughts or feelings start coming up.
Mm-hmm.
First is the pause. We must learn to pause, even if it's just for a few seconds. We talked about 2 seconds
Mm-hmm.
last time. Even if it's 2 seconds, just to pause for 2 seconds and acknowledge what you're feeling in your body. Are you having a thought? Are you going back to the conversation that you had with your husband earlier today? Or are you going in the future around, what do I need to get cooking for dinner
Mm-hmm.
in a half hour? You know, both of those places take you out of the moment. They also take you out of the joy. In a way, we're kind of, I thought today, we're kind of healing our consciousness. And in that healing of consciousness, we are healing our self criticism and healing our self judgment, because
Mm-hmm.
that is not helpful for us.
And once you've taken this pause and you've, like, let's say I've had a couple of thoughts, right? For me, is coming from a more cognitive perspective, is like, I used to, when I was younger, I would take this thought and say, this is the bloody truth. This is the truth. This is real for me. And even though it wasn't real for anyone else, it was real for me. So for me, what's important to do when I look at that thought is question the thought. Is it based on reality? Is this my interpretation of my perception alone? Or
Mm-hmm.
is this real?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I like that. I like the cognitive approach. And I think in the audience, as we're both talking, I come from cognitive sometimes, but a much more body meditative approach that would label those thoughts, be with them, investigate them a little bit, but not analyze them.
Mm.
Analyzing um, in my way of doing therapy or doing my life is following a story that's not worth following.
It's so funny because when you said analyze, I so remember when my partner would say, "You're overanalyzing this, Ellie. You're overanalyzing this," and I was just like, when we get to that point where you just like go over it and over it and over in your mind and look at all the different parts and like
Right,
let it go, just
right.
let it go. And I hear
Yeah.
you when you're saying, take a breath, notice it, and just let it go.
Or let it be. Okay,
Mm.
I am overanalyzing this. I am overthink. We're a society of overthinkers. I am overanalyzing, I am overthinking,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to do anything else. Just to label it sometimes is enough to allow the next thought to come up, which is a present moment thought.
And can you give me some examples of what labeling looks like to you?
Yeah, your mind might go like this. I'm trying. Let's see. Your mind might go like this, over analyzing. Uh, I'm trying to think of one. You can talk while I'm trying to think of one.
I think it goes back to what you just talked about, being in that
uh,
meeting, saying
yes,
something at the meeting, going over and over about the ramifications of what you just said, how everyone
absolutely. Okay.
interpreted it. And
Yes.
so,
And
okay.
then from there, you're in your head and you're personalizing, which we talked a little bit about. And
Mm-hmm.
also you're thinking about what am I going to say next? So you're in the future a little bit now. What am I going to
Mm-hmm.
say next? And in this overanalyzing of what did I just say and how bad was that and how am I going to fix it and what am I going to say next? You're missing whatever is being.
Done in the present.
Yes.
Got it. I got it. I got what you're saying. This is great.
Yeah.
So when I label that, Georgiana, am I labeling it as overanalyzing, ruminating, I'm self-judging, or am I labeling it as there I go again? Like what's a label?
Oh, that's a great question. There I go again. To me, sounds like self-criticism, which then you would label
Mm-hmm.
self-criticism. All the
Mm-hmm.
others were fine because ruminating, thinking about the past, I'm personalizing, are
Mm-hmm.
all just labels for thoughts.
Mm-hmm. It's like a verb. Those are
It's a,
all verbs. This is what I'm
okay.
doing.
Yeah, this is what
Yes.
I'm doing. But as soon as you go to something that says, um,
Like,
I'm doing it again,
yes.
that's self-criticism.
Got it. Got
And
it.
and then and that's okay too, because we're exploring thoughts like that. Okay, that's self-criticism, and you label it. I'm being
Mm.
self-critical.
And how can I go beyond that to self-love? I feel like there's such a, like, I don't know, like a chasm between self-love, accepting, and where I just was, which, okay, I just labeled something. Like, how can I learn to love myself and let go of that, let be and let go of that self-criticism?
Well, I think the first step is seeing yourself as the healer of your own consciousness and giving yourself credit for that piece. That inside there is a voice that knows the power that you have as an individual and knows that you know that power. And you just isn't a good word, that you are willing and desire to remember it. You want to remember it. You want to remember that you have the power to be kind and gentle to yourself. You want to remember you have the power to tune in to you because you have great wisdom inside. I really feel like we're all being called to tune into our great wisdom at this time. Self-criticism is not wisdom.
That kind of reminds me about what we talked earlier to intuition. Like when you say
Mm-hmm.
all of this, I think intuition. I've
Yeah.
got to trust my intuition. I've got my gut. I got to trust
Mm-hmm.
my gut, and I have to know that every moment I have what's inside of me to make the best of this moment and to move forward.
And
You
how do you
know?
trust intuition? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this is very true. How do you reclaim that self that is so powerful, that
Re-
intuition?
yeah,
Reclaim it.
reclaim your power. Get your power
Yeah,
back. Get your power
yeah,
back.
yeah.
Okay, I love it. Get your power back. Very cool.
So you want to access it first. You want to access by just taking a breath. Step back. Remember, we said that last week. Step back. Move away.
Mm-hmm.
Move back.
Get
Step
out of your
back.
head. Get out of your head.
Right. Get out of your head. Get in your breath. Get in your body. Step back. Take a breath. Take
Mm-hmm.
2 breaths. Access and reclaim that power, because you want to be a conductor of the truth. The truth lies inside you.
Hmm. We're already whole, right? We're
Oh
already whole.
yeah,
The truth
yeah,
lies inside of you.
yeah. We are already
So,
whole.
so just to recap, because you said
Mm-hmm.
you gave me a couple of really great tools. You said
Mm-hmm.
access it, go back into your breath,
Mm-hmm.
step back and get some perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember you said label it.
Mm-hmm.
Label it and let be.
And let it be. Letting go is much harder than letting be.
Can you expand on really quickly on the difference between letting go and letting be?
Um, Letting go of self-criticism means I'm never going to be self-critical. Letting be of self-criticism means that I'm going to recognize it, I'm going to access it, and I'm just going to let it be. I'm not going to follow a story, I'm not going to follow a narrative, I'm just going to let it be.
There's a certain level of ease that I'm hearing and letting be.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain ease. It's a
Kind.
coexistence of
Yeah,
sorts.
coexistence. I like that.
Okay, coexistence of sorts. Awesome. So, did you want to invite the listeners to?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, first I'd like to invite the listeners, if anything pops out at you from today's talk about self-criticism and intuition and your own sense of power and wisdom, and maybe you want to explore a little bit or think just even for a minute of when did you, when did that stop? When did you stop trusting deeply in yourself? Because that may be what we talk about next week, is that when did we stop trusting ourselves, and how are we going to access that power in ourselves again? I'd like to invite you to put a message for us on your podcast. If you're listening on a podcast, you can send voice messages on some of the streaming devices, or you can send an actual comment. If you